I'm wearing a genealogy tie. I got this in Cardiff, Wales, and on the back of it, it says Richards. This is a Richards tartan, and my great-grandfather came from Glamorgan, Wales. And I think, many times we can do genealogy in different ways. We can put on our clothing. A year and a half ago, I put together a model submarine that's in the back in honor of my father-in-law, here on the first row, Legrand Marchant. He was a submariner, and it was interesting putting together that information. Well, we're looking forward to everything that's going to happen today, and we'll begin with a keynote address by Anastasia Sutherland Harmon. And Anastasia is the lead family historian for Ancestry.com. Since 2006, she's directed Ancestry.com's largest research initiatives, including the family history research for NBC's Who Do You Think You Are TV programs. In addition, she has led the research team to such finds as the different connections of different people. And she's made several broadcast appearances. I know that if you go online and Google her, you can actually download some or see some of the presentations she's given on news programs throughout the country. Before joining the research team, she worked as an editor for Ancestry Publishing, editing Ancestry magazine and several family history books, including The Source, which is a reference book for family historians. She graduated from Brigham Young University with a BA in English and currently resides near Washington, D.C. with her husband, Tyler. So I'll introduce Anastasia to you.
Good morning. It's great to see everyone, and it's great to be back. I lived in this stake over in Tigard for about 3 years. I've been away for 2 years, so it's great to be back and to see so many familiar faces. So right now, I know what you're thinking. How has a 22-year-old accomplished so much? I'm a little bit older than that. In fact, I've been doing family history for about 25 years, since I was about 8 years old. So you can do the math and figure out exactly how old I am. But you're right, I am kind of young for doing family history. But the thing that I want to say is I am very passionate about family history. I love family history. And the things that I love about family history is I love the stories. When I was 8, I remember going to the family history centers with my dad. Monty Sutherland, some of you may know him, is my father. He's one of the organizers of this event. And we would look in books and microfilm, and then on long trips we'd talk about family history. And so I've been well versed in family history. So I'm quite honored to be able to take as my career something that I'm so passionate about. Now, as mentioned, I work quite extensively on a little TV show that some of you may have heard of. I don't know. Who Do You Think You Are? Anyone heard of it? Okay. And it's quite an experience. It's genealogy. It's at a fast pace, and it's one of the genealogists who has joined our team this year said, I've never done genealogy so fast and so much. And that's really true. And what I'm going to talk to you today about is some of the things that we do to find stories, because that's what family history is all about, to me at least. I know that we can go out and we can find names and dates of people, but I want to know the story. That's what I'm most interested in. And in fact, I love this quote. I love this quote by Alex Haley, who is the author of Roots. He says that he calls the desire to know your heritage and to know where you come from a hunger marrow deep. And I love that quote. And in fact, I do a lot of spokesperson things for Ancestry.com, and I often use that with the reporters because it really is. And I think that everyone in this room knows that hunger, to know where you come from and whose shoulders that you stand on. Now, as part of my work on Who Do You Think You Are, and as a spokesperson, to promote the show, we actually reached out to different markets in the United States and asked them if they would like to have their reporters' family history done. And then I went out and shared their family history with them. I took each of these reporters on their own little journey of discovery. And over the course of 6 weeks, in February and March of this year, I traveled 30,000 miles, crisscrossing the country, from San Diego to Boston to northern Minnesota to central Louisiana and over to Florida and everywhere in between, talking to 14 different reporters about their family history. And it was an amazing experience, and I want to share one with you. Like, fingers crossed that the internet works. It was working earlier. So I'm going to share one of those with you, and then I'm going to sit down and we're going to talk about some of the things that we do to try to find stories and that you can do to really try to find stories in your family history.
In high definition, this is News Channel 8 on your side at 11.
Serious question. Who do you think you are? More importantly, who do you think you are? It's a question asked every week on a show on NBC as celebrities research their roots.
Well, that show inspired me to find out a little bit more about my own family, and I got help from Ancestry.com.
That's the great thing about family history is if you know a little bit, you can learn so much more. And we've actually learned quite a bit about your family.
Coming up, join me as I trace my family tree back hundreds of years. So, who do you think you are? Tonight, you may have watched here on News Channel 8 as Ashley Judd found out more about her ancestors. I wanted to track my family roots for years, but frankly, I just didn't know how to begin. With the help of Anastasia Harmon, the lead family historian for Ancestry.com, I was able to put branches on a very sparse tree, and as you're about to see, the resources for you to do the same are plentiful.
So what do you know about your family?
I'm embarrassed to say that I don't know very much at all. Next to nothing. My father's side of the family is a big mystery to me. I am the only child of Betty Myers and Maurice Sirens. My dad, better known as Red for his strawberry blonde hair, was killed in a tragic on-the-job accident in Tampa when I was just 6 years old. My mother, widowed at 29, was devastated. She was never one to have a real sense of adventure, so our travels to Michigan, where my father's family lived, were limited. My knowledge of my own ancestry, virtually non-existent. Here's what I knew. On my father's side, he had a brother, Ted. Their mother died at a young age, so I never knew her. And his father, Maurice, remarried. With his new wife, they had 2 more children, Sue and Bill. It was enough to get us started.
That's the great thing about family history is if you know a little bit, you can learn so much more. And we've actually learned quite a bit about your family.
Anastasia quickly moved me through my father's side of the family tree. My grandparents were both born in Michigan, but all those Sirens before them came from Belgium. The town they were from, Wallonia, can't be found on any current maps, but records tell us they spoke Flemish, which was another clue.
So the southern part near France is where they're speaking Flemish. So they come from down here.
Using census reports from the early 1900s and the 1902 arrival records from Ellis Island, I was able to go back 3 generations. I found out my great-grandmother, Emily Dahman, came to America as an 11-year-old. She came with her mother, Marie, and 3 sisters. Passenger records can actually pinpoint the day they arrived, May 27th, 1902, on a ship called the Zealand. They sailed from Antwerp to Ellis Island. Amazingly, those records are able to even tell me that they had just $40 between them to start their new life in America. Another fascinating yet sad piece of information we were able to pull from census records are birth records.
This column says how many children have you given birth to and how many are still living. So she's given birth to 2 and 2 are still living, but look at your second great-grandmother.
7 children that she gave birth to, but only 4 living. She lost 3 children.
She's lost 3 children.
The mystery of my biological grandmother on my father's side is still the greatest for me to solve. I know she was young when she died, but how young and how did she die? I literally spent hours trying to track down her death record. I do know her roots take me to Canada and perhaps England.
On your father's side of the tree, You're Canadian, English, French Canadian, and Belgium. Now, your mother's side of the tree has been in the United States for a very long time.
On my grandmother's side,
Her family tree on the Dunlap side goes back into the 1700s in the American South.
her family lived in Tennessee in the 1800s, moving to Arkansas, the place of my grandmother and mother's birth. My grandmother actually moved in with my mother and me when my dad died, so I was very close to her, and yet knew so little about her life. What I regret is that I knew even less about my grandfather, her husband Harry. He died at 61. I was not quite 4.
Now, your grandfather, Harry, well, he's kind of a mystery.
And that mystery stems from no records of his parents. Just a 1910 census showing him living with his grandmother and aunts in Indiana. He was just 4 years old. That would lead you to believe his parents had either died or left him. On my Ancestry.com family tree, we weren't even able to pinpoint his parents' names. It's as if they vanished without a trace. What I was able to find from his World War I draft card is that he was a medium-sized man with blue eyes and light hair, and that he did, in fact, serve in the war.
You know, what I really want to point out is when I talk about these census reports and the Ellis Island, the travel records, and there really is so much you can uncover. These resources are there for the taking.
Yeah.
And it is fast. It's like a puzzle, and once you get started. But I'm very perplexed that there are a couple things I still haven't been able to figure out.
Has it motivated you to want to dig in
Yes.
and learn a little bit more? Because
It
you were
has.
saying the process in and of itself, you think on one hand, it's just too much, you don't even get started, but then you start digging, and the puzzle, as you say, you just want to fix it and find all the pieces.
I've literally spent hours and hours and hours trying to figure out how my grandmother died and at what age. If nothing else, I want to know part of my health, my medical record, my medical background, you know, but I haven't been able to pinpoint that yet.
Well, it's terrific. Terrific look into your life, and I'm sure it will encourage others
I
to
just
want to go
want-
out and do the same thing.
And that's what the story is really about. It's to encourage you to go figure that stuff out, because it's good for us to know about where we are and who do we really think we are, right?
So much of you from Belgium.
A lot of me
Who
up
knew?
on the side, right?
All this week, we have been doing our own spin on the hit NBC show, Who Do You Think You Are?, where historians...
So the thing about her family tree is we had her send us the information that she already knew, and she knew so little because her dad died when she was 6 years old, and she was sharing me her memories of that and how tragic that was, but she knew literally nothing about her tree. And I remember working with her producers, and they were so concerned that she didn't know enough. But with the few clues that she has, we were able to take that tree back literally 100 years and discover these stories that she had no idea that existed. And I need to say that this is a pattern that I saw throughout this experience, that people really don't know who they are, and it shocks me how many people don't even know who their great-grandparents were. I was lucky enough to have about 4 of my great-grandparents living when I was born, but most people, you get to great-grandparents and they don't know. Now, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but what I want to talk about today is some of the things that we do to help find these kind of stories and pretty much any project that we work on, and how you can use those in your family tree. So the first thing is that I get this quote a lot: normal people can't find those kinds of things. And now I'm going to tell you 3 secrets, okay? I'm going to tell you 3 secrets. The first one is that we do not travel around the world doing research. We do the majority of the research from Salt Lake City and on Ancestry.com. Now, our research team is based in Salt Lake City. We do a huge amount on Ancestry.com and other online resources, and then we do a lot at the Family History Library. Now, we do some things on the ground, but it is not, the bulk of it is done right in Salt Lake City. The next thing is that we don't have access to special or restricted records. we have the same privacy, we have to go through the same privacy restrictions and records that aren't available to the public that everybody else does. And the last thing is that it's not that people can't find the same stories that we find, it's that most people, even people who have been doing this for 20, 30 years, professional genealogists, never put in the amount of time it takes to find these kind of stories. And then I'd say the last thing is that a lot of times I think people just don't know where to find stories in the records. And so that's what we're going to spend a bulk of today talking about, is how you can just find these stories in the records that you probably have already found. So the next thing I want to talk about is the single most important question to ask when doing family history. And if you get nothing else out of this day or my keynote, remember this question: why? Why? Ask why. Never stop asking why. If you see something that makes you pause and think and you're like, well, that's interesting, I wonder why. Stop and research it. Because oftentimes, and I would even go as far as to say that the majority of times when we find a story, it's because we ask why. Well, that's kind of strange. I wonder why. Let's look into that a little bit more. And I have that conversation on a daily basis, and that's how we get to stories. So I'm going to first talk about story hints, and I'm going to talk about family rumors and personal interests. So when you see somebody on TV saying, I've always been really interested in my great-grandmother because she's been a character, that's real, that's true, that's where their interest lies, and that's kind of where we started researching. But I really want to focus on family rumor. Now, most family rumor has a hint of truth, but often the stories have been retold and exaggerated over years of storytelling. And actually, I meant to say this earlier, but let me say it now. The majority of examples I'm going to go through today come through my family tree and come through those anchors. And you're going to find I talk very seldom about celebrities. And I'm doing that on purpose because I want you to see that it's not celebrities, that these are just everyday people. I'm an everyday person, and I need to say that local news anchors are everyday people as well. They may seem like local celebrities, but they really are just everyday people. These are everyday family trees, and I really want to emphasize that this is something that anybody can do with their family tree. So in my family tree, there's a rumor that the Robesons were tailors for the King of England. Now, as I've done the research, I found that the Robesons were tailors, and they were from Berkshire in England, which is the same county where Windsor Castle is. Now, that doesn't prove that they were tailors for the King and Queen of England, but it does, you can see that hint of truth. Now we have this quilt that actually goes along with the rumor that is, it's kind of a patchwork quilt, and the story is that these are patches and scraps from the cloaks and things that the tailors made for the King and Queen. Well, I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's true. But it may have been, maybe he made a piece of clothing that the king saw and bought. And so the family rumors come down that they were tailors for the King and Queen of England. But there is a hint of truth. So that's the first thing I want to say about family rumors. Now, there's three common family myths that some of you may have in your family history. The first one is that I'm related to an Indian princess or a Native American princess. I need to tell you, and I don't want to disappoint you, but it's not true because Native American tribes didn't have princesses. And that's the first problem with that. Now, we can go into other problems, but we're not going to, because we're going to move on to the next myth. There's a lot of people who have this myth that three brothers immigrated, and they came over a long time ago, and one went north, and one went south, and one went west. That's a really common myth. Okay? A lot of people have that in their family history. It may be true, but just know that if you do have that in your family history, so do millions of other people. So it's just, it is a common rumor. And the last thing is, well, they changed my family's last name at Ellis Island. And they actually didn't. Ellis Island was, if you've traveled abroad, or even if you've traveled domestically, you have a ticket that has your name on it, and it has to be spelled the same way as your identification. And the airlines can make a list of people based on, that information that you provided. Similarly, back in the 1800s, and while they were coming through Ellis Island in the early 1900s, they created a passenger list, the U.S. government required that every ship coming into the United States have a list of every passenger on board. Many of you have seen these in your own family history. It's an amazing resource. But that ship's manifest was created from the documents that the immigrants held that were created in their own country. And when they went through Ellis Island, the Ellis Island official had that list in front of them, and they were just checking off that list. They didn't say, oh, your name's too hard to pronounce, we're changing it to Smith. That didn't happen. Now, did your family change their last name when they got to America? Absolutely, that's probably true. But they didn't do it at Ellis Island. They did it when they got to school, and the teacher was like, you know, that's a really difficult last name. Let's change it to something else. Or they were just trying to assimilate into American culture, or maybe there was prejudice. Okay, if they were German, maybe they changed their last name to something less German sounding during the First World War. So names changed, but kind of get it out of your head that it happened at Ellis Island because it didn't. Okay, I want to say, don't let family rumors and myths and stories sidetrack you from your research. Really just put those stories aside and focus on what the documents tell you. Now, am I saying that you shouldn't give any credence to family rumors? Absolutely not, because as I said before, there is a vein of truth. But I've seen too many times where family rumors are so big and they're so bloated, and there's like this seed of truth down there, and if you start trying to prove these other parts of it and focusing on the other parts of the family rumor, you're gonna be stuck and you can't go anywhere. And a lot of times, I gotta tell you, the family rumor is hiding a better scandal. So focus on the documents, because you might find something much more interesting. Okay, ask yourself, what is this family rumor based on? Is it based on truth? Is it based on exaggeration? Odds are yes to both of those. The last thing, is it based on shoddy research? And that would be someone else's family tree that you find online, maybe a family history that was put together 100 years ago. There is shoddy research out there. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in my own family tree.